Thank you all so much for tuning in today. I'm really excited to be diving into this office hours today, both to learn all about how to be telling your brand story with the power of psychology and design, and also because a core goal of Dreamers and Doers is to amplify you and your journeys. And one of the ways we achieve this is by facilitating game-changing educational events such as this one that give us the opportunity to level up together. So before we officially begin, I want to share a bit of background information on our esteemed expert. With a background educating designers and storytellers in the entertainment industry, Jessie Kate brings her professional story tools to the entrepreneurial space to empower your voice and elevate your brand. As an instructor at the Art Center College of Design, she helped students understand how social psychology affects design. Her recently published book, Talking Threads: Costume Design for Entertainment Art, fills a void in the entertainment industry and helps creatives use costumes to create immersive identity designs that drive stories forward. Most recently, she has been mentoring creatives to develop original fictional stories inspired by their personal experiences. Her signature process, the parallax method, blends story, psychology, and design to help you find and fictionalize your story and rewrite your narrative so you can become a protagonist in your own life. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Jessie Kate. I am so excited to unpack all of this. There's some words in there that I don't know, so I'm thrilled for this.
Yeah.
We're excited to learn from your expertise. We know how valuable your time is, and we're so grateful to you for investing in the collective in this way.
Thank you so much. Like, I feel I'm super psyched. This is like such a fun place. And I have to thank Hillary Hartling over here in my corner of the Zoom call for really like helping me see how I can help you all by transforming some of my tools. Before I met her, I was just hustling with the artists. And so like definitely got to thank her on the on the call for this. But yeah, let me get a screen share going and I'll start talking through things. And if there are any at any point, I will do my best to make sure to define any terms that I use that are specific, any jargon or lingo. But if I fall into something and you're just like, what is that word? Feel free to stop me. Go for it, Hannah. You can just go like, what is that? I'll make sure to define that. Sometimes I'll forget because I'm just always in the rhythm of talking with artists. So let me get that screen share going and get this on present. Okay. So like Hannah mentioned, telling your brand story with power of psychology and design. And as she so nicely read through my story and kind of what I do, just a couple different notes on that. I really do come from this background working with artists and designers and storytellers, and it's because I was doing that myself. So I was freelancing and wanting to become a concept artist for the entertainment industry, but I was really running into a lot of imposter syndrome on the process. I wanted to make sure that I could go into work and execute under any of these like sort of creative restrictions or needs, and I just felt like an imposter. I had imposter syndrome all the time. So once I realized that story was like the key to what I needed in order to understand how to drive design, it unlocked all these things. I found all these wonderful tools. But once I had that big problem out of the way, all it did was open up the Pandora's box of room for me to realize what was really stopping me. Some of the more personal imposter syndrome that was stopping me from being confident enough to apply for the jobs and deal with failure and go through that process. So in the midst of all of that journey, I've kind of come up with this method, like Hannah mentioned, called the parallax method, which combines tools that not only help you create stories that you can use to drive your business or to create wonderful fictional, immersive, inspiring narratives, but that also in the process of doing that and creating that, you're actually finding more confidence, finding more self-sufficiency and empowerment in yourself by reflecting on what's driving your narrative. So to give you a little bit of a big umbrella view, because we're going to actually go through the very first steps of the parallax method today, and I'll kind of introduce them to you. We'll get a little chance to workshop them, but to give you the umbrella view of how it plays a role in the full process, I'll just walk you through these 3 slides. So the very first slide, this is what we're going to talk about, is identifying your aha moment, your kind of core story moments, your archetype, and breaking down your lie. These are using Hollywood storytelling structures and enneagram archetypes. Some of you might have run into Enneagram through business, but it's definitely a really, really useful tool on understanding core motives, what's driving you, what you're afraid of, what's really going to bring you satisfaction. Super useful for your own development, but also super useful in understanding what your clients might need and what you want to communicate to them through your story so that you're resonating with, I can fulfill what you're looking for and how this is going to address your deeper needs. The second step is fictionalizing your story. So not everybody here might want to go into that, but it is super useful even in a business perspective because we can use these analogies and metaphors that we develop to drive branding design. So that can be things like visuals, patterns, fonts, and things like that to create a cohesive metaphor that can help people recognize your brand, remember your brand, things like that. And then the very last step is rewriting your narrative. So this is using a lot of the therapy tools that I stumbled across in my own personal development, and really using that to understand how to tackle day-to-day challenges, really understand how to tell a new story about the experience that you're having in that moment so that you can feel empowered and have action that you can take to move towards productivity and alignment instead of just more chaos or stress or hustle kind of rushing. So those are the 3 steps. So we're going to talk about our aha moment and we're going to talk about our lie and our truth. These are our 3 core story moments, right? Without any of the other pieces and all the complex, whiz bangs of the storytelling, with these 3 things, you're going to get a really, really good set of foundation that you can come up with new ideas about or really build pillars around and things like that. So to find your aha moment, you're going to look for a time that you made a breakthrough that affected your life. As business owners, oftentimes this breakthrough is the thing that happened right before you found your business service or your great creative project. It's a void that you noticed, something that really revealed itself. And it's often a paradox. It's the thing that would have been hard to realize before. So for example, you might find that you were struggling to feel connected to other people and you were trying to do that. You're trying to reach out to them and connect with them, and you realize that boundaries were actually productive towards making connection, because maybe dropping your boundary was not making those positive, healthy connections that were longer lasting. Setting boundaries to create connection, paradox, right? So we're looking for something like that. Let go to hold on, slow down to speed up, something that would be a little unexpected, that would have been something you had to go through some challenges to get through. So once you have that realization, sometimes this can come with a real harsh reality check, because you also realize, oh, maybe I was contributing to my own sort of struggle. It wasn't just everything around me, making things hard. We have our financial limitations, we have emotional limitations, but sometimes it's us getting in our own way because we didn't realize that we were kind of missing a piece and we were sort of self-fulfilling the prophecy that we had created for ourselves. So I want you all to take a little moment, and I want to give you a second, because I don't want to just plow through a whole lecture of things. I want you to come out with something. So I'm going to give you a minute, and I want you to just think about what your aha moment could be. You might have a really loose idea. It's okay if it's a placeholder. I like to think of that as like the key to getting through the sort of like fear of, making a mistake or not having something really polished or great. It's just think, I'm making a placeholder. What is a potential aha moment, a paradox that I had to realize to get to where I'm at today? So I'm gonna give you a little minute. You guys can write it in the chat as you come up with it, or you can keep it to yourself if you'd like, but I wanna give you that second. I love these ones that are already coming in. These are great. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving, but feel free to kind of keep pondering as we go, because these three moments are going to connect. So sometimes one will help reveal the other, and we'll just move on to the next one. Okay. Oops. So the lie is what was holding you back from the aha moment, right? This is a statement of belief that really would have made it hard to come to that conclusion. So as an example, if we had let's say setting boundaries helps nurture connection, we might have something like, unless I change for everyone else, I will be rejected. That might be a lie that would make it really hard to set boundaries, right? Or here are some other examples, like your worth is based on status and achievements, vulnerability is a weakness, no one will respect you if you make a mistake. These are the types of things that are making it really difficult to realize the healthier realizations that we need. And so if you think about your story, and you look back at your past, it's not always something that you could say like, oh yeah, I had this lie and I had this statement that I was thinking in my head. It's more in reflection that we look back and say, oh, I think subconsciously this is a situation that was teaching me this realization. And so I was just doing it as an automatic coping mechanism. I wasn't really thinking about it, but I just operated in that way. A lot of times people who work in entrepreneurship, we live in a world of competition and competitiveness. And so those self-worth stories can be really often a source of inspiration, right? Like we think, oh, I have to win the awards. I have to check the boxes of being the highest position at the workforce or whatever, and that pushes us and makes it difficult for us to realize that we might have something like innate worth, right? That doesn't require an achievement to have. And so those are the kinds of things you might find patterns of for yourself. Okay, yeah, exactly. Like money and success. Like these are the kinds of things that will make me happy if I have money and success. And so sometimes this lie can actually sound like, it doesn't always have to have like a negative feeling. It can say like, oh, money and success will make me happy. It can sound like it's a positive sounding phrase. It just is a limiting belief. It is a lie if you look at the whole of your story. Okay. So then we're going to go to our truth. You guys can jot down your thoughts on this, but again, I'll give you another second to kind of write again after the truth, because these ones have a nice pairing that will help you make it clearer if you get stuck. So the truth you realize is what happens when you act on the new belief, when you act on the aha moment and you test it out. Like if, for example, vulnerability is a weakness, was a weakness in my lie, and vulnerability is like now possibly a source of power, like I've entertained that thought. If I play it through, I can believe it, right? So vulnerability is a source of power, it becomes the more positive, strong statement, right? And so you can start to do things like add a little bit more nuance to it depending on your story. Like maybe the lie being vulnerability is a weakness that allows others to take advantage of me. It's really specific. It has a lot more to do with the context that you might have dealt with. Towards nurturing vulnerability will give me power to protect myself and others. So it really changes from someone taking advantage to I can help others not be taken advantage of using the same thing, right? It's really transformative. So we're looking for that. And it does have this oppositional feeling to that, the lie and truth, right? They have a sort of yin yang relationship. So I'm going to give you another minute to kind of play with some of these ideas. Write down a placeholder lie, a placeholder truth to kind of pair with your aha moment. And then once I'll give you a minute to do that. And then I want you guys to start shooting some out. If you feel comfortable, sometimes these are a bit emotional and these can be very vulnerable. So it's okay if you don't feel comfortable, but if you do, I would love to help you find clearer ways to say that idea once you feel comfortable to share it. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to go through and write some of those things. And then we'll start workshopping a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a chance to. I've already gone through some of the chat ones that we've gone through, but before I move through and just start workshopping these, have I dropped any phrases? Have I said any lingo or jargon that anybody wants clarified? I'm happy to. I talk fast and I go through things really fast, so I want to make sure I pause for that. Oh, Enneagram. Okay, so I will talk about this in just a second, and we'll do that in the next slide. And so I'll give you guys a chance to get a little bit of a clearer picture of Enneagram. But ultimately, in a big broad sweep, Enneagram is a way to describe human motivations into 9 different categories, bucketed into like ways that we address shame, fear, and anger. And it's like the different ways that we address it. And so I'll talk through those a little bit more after we workshop this. Okay, I love these answers. I hope you guys are kind of going through the chat too. These are beautiful insights that everybody's having. I'm already feeling inspired just from this. It's its own talk on its own, just you guys' comments. So I think I'll start talking about some of the ways that we can simplify this. So I'm looking at Teresa's, for example. Loyalty brought me value and recognition at my company, but that loyalty or lifer experience wasn't being rewarded any longer. Loyalty to other organizations and now to myself can bring me to my fullest potential. I love that example. I think it's a really nice, simple one. And I'm going to kind of give you some more ways that we can simplify that even further. Ultimately, what you're talking about is loyalty to self, trust in self, or support of self. So if we really had to pick like one single word, it might be support, right? Because loyalty provides support. And so if that feels resonant with you, you could go down that road of using that kind of language and say, if I am loyal to others, I will gain support, right? And had many truths involved with that, but it was missing a piece, which was when I'm loyal to myself, like I can sustainably have support. It's not sort of dependent on someone else in order to feel supported, because you want to be able to feel like you can do that alone, right? Not just when other people are around, that there's a support environment for that. So it's having faith in yourself, trust in yourself, things like that, right? And so we can use those kinds of pieces of language, trust, faith, support, to really crystallize or clarify some of these ideas. When I support myself, or when I trust myself, I gain support, might be a truth phrase. Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
I just said yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so those are the kinds of things like, and this is where, you know, as you clarify your own story moments, this is really important. I think one of the things that we can often do when we're working with branding or company and services is to think about the customer first, and like to kind of fixate on their story. It's important. It's part of the process. But until we understand what we're doing and what our motivations are, it's really difficult to understand how we can offer support to somebody else with maybe a different problem or something similar, right? And so we're really trying to ground our own personal brand narrative and then say, okay, now what is my client, right? So you can repeat the same process for yourself on your own time, where you go through and say, okay, what is my client's truth, lie, and aha moment? What have I noticed from my clients that I've worked with? Sometimes they're a mirror client, they're just like you, and that makes it pretty easy. Copy, paste, done, check. And sometimes they're a little different, or you might have a variety of people. And what you're doing is trying to figure out how those sort of complement each other, right? Any other questions? Anybody else want to like take a stab at working through this, or anybody stuck? Like, I'm happy to take a very messy thought and turn it into a little bit of a simpler thought if you guys are stuck. Looking through some more of these. Yeah. Okay. So another one I like, so again, I'm just going to jump in. So Julie Hackett, I always thought that my motivator was to make money and be a success as society defines. When really I want to make people happy and do something meaningful. It turns out you can do both at the same time. Yes. This is like the magic sauce, right? We really want to think about how these coping mechanisms that we're dealing with at the beginning, these limiting beliefs, these lies, are a response to something real. Right? There's a real problem or a limitation or a struggle that made you see that conclusion. It isn't completely broken. There's a kernel of truth in there that's valuable, right? That having, like, say, stability, financial stability is beneficial and it helps you be creative. Yes, that's true. Like, so then there's part of that you want to accomplish in your end goal, but you don't have to have that be compromising, right? It doesn't have to be reinforcing a negative self-worth. And so when you can delete the negative self-worth and then say, just keep the tools, all the cool, awesome tools that you have, and turn them into something that isn't a coping mechanism, into an empowering tool, you definitely have something that can provide the world with a great service. Okay, yes, great, I love it. Okay, so I'm gonna keep moving so I can get as much as I can, give you guys as much as I can. So essentially, yeah, we've kind of gone through this, just having your lie, truth, and aha moment. Okay, Enneagram. So like I said, Enneagram is a way to sort of simplify the different motivations that people have. People use branding archetypes and different terms and labels. What we want to look at is the core motives, right? And so Enneagram is great for that. Like if we see some of the common branding archetypes, they're useful. Like they might be like the maverick or things like that. Those are great. And a lot of them are based on the same principles. But if you're really trying to get your story broken down, you really want to look at like why it's called the maverick. Like what is the reason that it leads to that type of attitude, as an example. So I have some examples of lies for each of these types, right? These are very stereotypical, just like with all kind of storytelling, you want to feel like it's a lot more flexible than this, but I've just given you an example so that you can kind of break the ice. So as an example, unless I'm perfect, I won't have integrity or be good. Unless I'm serene, I won't find wholeness. And I'm going to talk about this type 9 one as an example because I'm a type 9 and it's really fun to talk about Runaway Bride. So, so we're going to talk about Runaway Bride. So with unless I'm so serene, I won't find wholeness. These are big words that I use when I'm kind of templating things out, but understanding what's really behind that. Unless I'm serene means like, unless I have no conflict ever, everything is always fine, everything is always peaceful, then I won't be aligned. I won't feel whole. I won't feel harmonious, right? Runaway Bride expresses this by mimicking the fiancés that she's around. She becomes like them. She mirrors them. She echoes them. Right? Because if I'm similar to you, then I won't create conflict or tension. Things will be serene. Everything will be harmonious. I'm not going to get rejected. I'm going to feel like I'm part of the whole of my group. I'm not going to get kicked out. Right? And so that's really important to her. But the problem is when you do that so often to create that harmony, you lose track of who you are because you almost forget your preferences. I mean, literally do, because when you're constantly adapting to other people, when someone says, "What eggs do you like?" is the classic scene from Runaway Bride, she doesn't know because even though she's had lots of eggs, she's never had that be like, I'm making a preference right now. And so she doesn't recall it, right? So for this type of person, oftentimes they struggle. I work with a lot of 9s because they struggle to tell their story because they almost don't know what it is. Like they've lost track of it by adapting so often, right? So those are the kinds of things that can happen. People who are looking for loyalty, we just talked about the support. Unless I have guarantees, I won't have support. Unless I have guaranteed loyalty, guaranteed, a job, I'm part of the team, I'm not going to feel supported. So I need to be sure to conform as much as possible to guarantee the support, right? So these are the kinds of things that can happen. And so you can go through, and there's some great resources for this, Enneagram Worldwide, Enneagram Institute, where you can go through on the website, navigate some of the different kind of prompts and anecdotes and information to figure out what your story feels most aligned with. Right? Is this a story about worth? Is this a story about support? Is this a story about conflict avoidance? Like what's really happening right here? And if you understand that, you now not only have a little clarity about your story, but you have a wealth of references. Now you can watch these movies and you can say, how did they tell that story? How did Runaway Bride create like a fun rhythm and momentum to the way that we presented that idea, that lie, truth, and aha moment in an interesting way, right? And so you can look at that, you can take in a lot of inspiration. You can also look, really fun little cheat for storytelling. Go on IMDb, go on Netflix, look at the little like summary of the story. Those are great examples of summarizing a narrative. IMDb is a great one though, specifically, for how to tell, like simplify that type of narrative. You can use that to model and template your own, right? Because you go, oh, I'm actually telling a story about that too. And I just, in place of Runaway Bride, I'm going to say something about brand stories or something like that to that effect. And so it makes it a really playful way to take a little bit of the stress off of like, oh God, I have to create this identity narrative that's everything is dependent on. It's stressful. Like, let's make it fun again, right? Okay, so then we have, let's see, go back to this. So then I have some story circle things. I will send you guys these slides after if you want to reference anything, because I know that this is like a little bit too much to digest in one call. But ultimately, what we are doing as humans when we tell the bigger story and we start to connect the dots between these moments, we have that lie, that truth, and that aha moment, but there's story moments between that, right? And the between moments are what kind of flesh out our narrative if we want to write like a longer bio or memoir or things like that. And so what we want to think about it as is like we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These are 8 story moments. This is a story structure called the story circle based on the hero's journey, but much more simple, much more flexible, more contemporary. So it's easier to kind of adapt to different needs. And so we have our lie, and that's our first moment. We think, okay, where is our story at the beginning? Create the lie. Our aha moment usually happens over here, nearer to the end of the story, and then our truth, right? And so what we're looking at in our narrative is all the different moments and experiences that you had to have to break down that lie, to have things prove to you that that lie couldn't be true in a little by little, because we're stubborn. We want to believe it. If it's the lie is familiar and it works for us, we're just going to keep operating on it until it is broken down and it's impractical to use it anymore, right? So we're going to meet people, we're going to have experiences, we're going to trial and error, we're going to fail, we're going to win the competition, lose the competition, we're going to do all these different things to have these moments that teach us that lie can no longer be true anymore. And it helps us see that aha moment, right? From that aha moment, we then start to experiment again and then connect to our change moment, our final truth, right? So again, I'm using lots of jargon, but ultimately what we're doing is we're taking our lie, our aha moment, and our truth, and we're just breaking down all those steps that we need to get to the end. We're really just creating the step-by-step version of the story. We can also do that for the emotional side of the story. So we can kind of do it as plot, which is like events, and emotions. How was I feeling during those events, right? What was the situation that prompted the emotional change? So by just isolating it out and simplifying it, you can create a very clear structured narrative with 8 moments, right? Bye, Hillary. Okay, so this is all complicated again, but you can totally hit me up for follow-ups after. Well, I'll give you some information about that if you wanted to go through this a little bit further. So quick win, what we're gonna do right now is we're going to take our lie, our truth, and our aha moment, and we're gonna identify our client's want and need to add to that mix, right? So I want you guys to write down your basic client's want and need. That client's want might be something like, I want a, we're doing brand story, so I want a brand story, right? And what I'm telling you guys you need, right, is some kind of emotional insight or something to that effect, right? And so I'm going to write down both. You're going to write down both of those for your particular service or industry. What does your client want and your client need? And you can put it in the chat or write it down however you need to. And then whoever is game that wants to participate, we can do this actual sort of quick win version for you. The you will be your lie and the change will be your truth. I provide clients with want in ways that lead to the aha moment so they can gain deeper need, right? We're just gonna Mad Libs your version into it, right? So whoever wants to volunteer, you can pop onto the audio and we'll go through and create one of these. Yeah, Teresa, why don't you pop up, like pull up your audio and let's just brainstorm through it. Cause like if you're confused, somebody else is confused, let's just workshop it. That's my favorite way to do it anyway. So
I'm all about the honesty. I'm like, wait,
yeah,
this is who's lie and who's truth. And
yeah. So what we're gonna do,
okay.
yeah, so let's do this. We're gonna think about we're gonna use your client as a mirror to you for right now so that we have the ones that we used. So what was your lie?
My lie, wait, I rewrote it
Mm-hmm.
because you worked it with me already. Yeah. So I'm stealing all your time. This is like a private session. Let me find it. If I am, oh wait, where did I find it? Sorry. When I trust in myself, my lie was that I need to be loyal. Mm. Loyalty brought me value and recognition in my company, but that loyalty, life, or experience wasn't being rewarded. Loyalty to another organization and now to myself can bring me my fullest potential. So my lie was that loyalty outside brought me value and recognition, I guess.
Yeah. So, and what we would do to make it the lie is say only, right? Say only external validate, only external like guarantees or support makes me feel, supported, whatever. It's like you're sort of making it so that
if I am loyal to others, I will gain support. And then the truth is when I trust in myself, I can sustain myself.
Okay, cool. So then what is your client? Let's talk about what is your service? What do you work with?
I work with organizations to help develop their culture.
Okay, culture. Okay, so then what do they particularly want? Like, what's the specific thing that they call to you? Say, like, I want this particular outcome from you.
I would say that they are looking for support and guidance to create a strong corporate culture focused on productivity, profit, and connection.
Okay. So they're really like, they're looking for some kind of structure, like a reliable structure.
Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah. And then what does that give them what do you provide for them that they sort of, usually there's some reason that they haven't solved it themselves because they're missing something like that you're bringing in that's like filling the space. Like you guys didn't realize you needed. Is there anything like that you've run into?
I think that oftentimes people relegate, this might be a complicated one, maybe not. People relegate their kind of culture development to a department, i.e. the HR department, as opposed to seeing it as a organizational ethos and how they can kind of bring in all departments, all functions into the culture change process.
Okay, so one thing that this is, I'm going to do a little bit of stealing from everything. Oh, okay. Sorry, I will see you, Mindy. Okay, so we're going to steal a little bit of Enneagram to clarify this. So with Enneagram, I see this as, let me go back. The type 6, we talked about the loyalty, right? This is a space where people feel supported. They're looking for support. One of the things that makes them nervous because they're looking for support and guarantees is differences, right? So they're going to seek conformity over differences. That's why we see things like team logos and things like that, because it makes us feel like we're all together.
Connected. Yep.
Exactly. But one of the things that you mentioned is when HR creates it versus when the community itself is participating, the community is more uncertain. We don't know where this is going to go. We don't know what kind of opinions we're going to get. That's stressful to someone who wants to kind of have guaranteed loyalty. Mm-hmm. And so what you're saying is don't be afraid of those different voices. Like that isn't going to compromise loyalty. Like that isn't a problem, but it feels like a problem to someone who is worried about this type of concern, right? And so let's start writing. I'm going to write it down in the chat because it helps me kind of snag it. Okay, so what we have is we need to listen to what, like our team, listen to, like, how would you express that if you had to give them like the tip? I think you guys need to listen to your team, listen to your community, listen to your you know, how would you speak that in their language?
Yeah, I would say, you need to, well, I wouldn't phrase it that way, but
okay,
never mind. I would say that culture is accumulation of what's occurring, and what I think the organizations I speak to are missing is defined culture. So defined culture markers is the name of my company. So defining what those actual markers within an organization will look like that embodies their culture. So I think what they're missing is definition. They're missing kind of a broader understanding that culture encompasses a lot of things and isn't just like, you know, we had a happy hour once and now we have culture, or hey, people are feeling disconnected, so let's have a happy hour, or let's bring in lunch. And I'm working with organizations that are like really on the rise of like developing who they are.
Okay, so we want to create like a nurture, like real connection, not just sort of like surface loyalty. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so that's their need and their want. They come in because they feel like what problem is happening?
They could feel that there's a morale issue. They could feel that they're not being as productive, or they're not seeing the participation that they would like to see at various levels of the organization. It could be, there's a variety of reasons. So
yeah, so they're trying to, they figure that like defining their culture in some way is going to solve that. Like we need to have like a clear brand, clear culture so that everybody's sort of in sync. Like, but you're saying, but I can define culture, which is what you want, while bringing deeper connection within your company, which is going to provide the real loyalty, like authentic loyalty. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's get back. I'm very much a workshopper, so I just like doing it like with you guys. This is my favorite. Thank you for participating. Okay. Okay, so then we have our lie of gaining support. There's, oops, more like trusting ourselves. Uncertainty. Okay, what would be a prompting example? Like we're going to look for is like, what would prompt the lie? So like, for example, it might be like the Great Resignation, or something that's going to prompt them to be like, oh, no, I better have a defined culture, or we're going to, you know, something that's more urgent.
Massive turnover.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So our lie is, unless we do this, we're going to have massive turnover. Right? But their problem is that they're looking in the wrong direction, right? So unless we all conform to the same thing, we're going to have massive turnover. It's not about conformity, it's about culture, right? That's what you're saying. Like, instead of saying, let's just have everybody agree. Yeah.
I think it's, we've already had the massive retention issues. So now we need to define our culture.
Okay.
Like, we're losing people.
Okay.
If we don't create culture, we'll continue to have great attrition.
Okay. Okay, and then that's going to lead to them like losing against the competition and sort of like failing in their industry, right? Yeah.
Yep, productivity, profit loss, sure.
Yeah. Okay, and then let's see. And then what you're telling them, give them the vision of what happened. So you mentioned like that you're going to bring deeper connection and loyalty, like because they're actually defining like a meaningful sense of culture. But what is that change? You mentioned trusting yourself, right? You're like learning how to trust myself. really helped me to move forward and finding more sustainable support. How does that get embodied in the way that you do business and the way that you like, how have you enacted it differently and seeing that like trusting ourselves, like we're trying to scale trusting yourself into trusting themselves as a culture or a company?
Do I feel like this is potentially getting boring for everybody else? Because I really feel like I need to mentally workshop this.
Okay, that's fine. We're going to do a placeholder version. So
yeah,
the problem is the you lie is unless we define our culture, we will lose employees and lose out in competition. That's essentially like their lie, right? So from losing your employees and stressing about the competition, that's their you, right? In this little quick win template. 2, being able to like come together to face uncertainty with confidence. That's the change. I provide clients with defined cultures that bring productivity, profit, that also bring connection to your company, that nurtures authentic loyalty to stand the test of times or to stand the uncertain times or whatever.
Okay, right? I love all of that. Let me just send me the recording. I'm like, I don't know. I have people say that to me a lot. They're like, "Oh, I wish you would say that again," and I'm like, I can't say it again. It was like facilitation.
I know, it's like I was like just on the edge of my thought right now.
Yeah,
no, totally.
Because I'm gonna pull some good stuff from that. You're gonna see it on my website soon.
So that's kind of what we're doing is like and you can do this for yourself. Like again, this exercise can be applied to yourself to help you understand it in an easier way, because it can be a little muddy when you're trying to apply it to your company. But I want to give you an example so you can see how it like directly applies. So just
to clarify for myself, when you say from you, that's from my lie,
your story,
to
right?
My truth. Yeah. I provide clients with what they want.
Yeah.
In ways that lead to this aha moment, which is defined,
so
they can gain a deeper need.
Yeah. So what I would do for you when you're first workshopping this is do it as if you're just writing your personal story about yourself and there's no clients involved, right?
Yep.
So like from feeling like I have to do this for everybody else in order to get work, to realizing that I can trust myself and have my own feet underneath me and not, be reliant on everybody else's whims, right? Like I learned how to address my own want, right? Some kind of stability and sense of support in ways that led me to
this epiphany
so that I can gain a deeper sense of self-trust,
gotcha.
Right? And then you just then say, okay, if you can do it for myself, then I can translate that, scale it up, and just sort of like modify it for my client. If your client's a mirror client, it's going to be very easy, right? Because you're just translating it up to their words, right? Does that make sense?
Oh, so helpful. Thank you. And thank you everybody else for joining me on that journey.
It's always easier to have a demo. So like, I'm glad that you were willing to, and I hope everyone was okay with that. Does anybody have any questions based on what I just did? Because I know that we were jumping around a little bit. Okay. Okay, so then let me give you an example. Oops. Let's move this over. That you can do like on a bigger scale, right? So we just talked about this kind of quick version where you can say from the point A of my story, from my lie story moment to my end story where I figured out the truth. I figured out how to address my want, get an aha moment, and deal with my need. That's the encapsulation. That's like the thread of your narrative, right? You can use the story circle to sort of bridge everything, so it's got a little bit more clarity. I'm going to give you an example of how I went through and did that, where I bridged the section. So I segmented the story sections because I know it's hard to conceptualize without just having a grounded example. So I told you guys a little bit about my story. I was a concept artist. I wasn't content. I had dealt with imposter syndrome. That's the you beat. That's the I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. My lie is driving my life, right? Because I thought that if I created tension, or I was the runaway bride character, I couldn't really have a really strong opinion, or it was going to get rejected. So I just better do what everyone else says to do, right? But the need arises, like I can't actually solve it, and story is the missing piece. So there's a need that kind of comes to the surface. I realize that if I can learn how to tell a story, design will come organically out of that. I've identified the need. That's what I want. So go. I decide to master the story. I'm going to go do that. These words are very simple. I need it. I go and get it, and I'm going to search for it is next. So I searched for it. So I went so deep into this process of figuring out how to be a concept artist without any imposter syndrome that I wrote a whole book about it, because I had to know exactly every single step. I think Morgane, who I know is an Enneagram 5, probably relates to this sort of obsessive breakdown. And then I found it. What I thought was what I wanted. Right? I found the thing. I got the book. I got the success that people were able to, hire me. I was able to get these great reviews. Like I wasn't an imposter in my surface skills. Right? I found it. This is this is the aha moment. But I realized once that was out of the way that I still felt stuck. And so why am I still stuck? And it's because I had this trauma when I was young where we lost our house. Right? And when we lost our house, because of my family sort of sticking to their values or their guns, I learned if I stick to my guns, I'll lose my house. I'll be homeless. I need to accommodate other people to be stable, to be, to have what I need. Right? So I learned that, like I mentioned, I said, if other people don't agree with your values, you become homeless. So I have to be people pleasing. I have to be certain. I have to know what everybody else wants and provide it, or I'm going to lose my home, in this very deep feeling. So just again, realizing I was just a reflection of other people, very runaway bride, don't know what eggs I like moment. So then I had to find myself. This is returning back to the challenge. Okay, I've got these tools I built, like this book and these skills and these practical techniques. And I have this new, deeper realization that I need to find myself. So I'm going to return on the journey. I'm not feeling stuck anymore, but it's just a new challenge, right? I'm going to start paving the road. I have to risk all of these things, because now if I have to face conflict is everywhere suddenly, because now my preferences are causing tension with everyone, right? So I'm still returning, I'm figuring this out, but along the way, as I'm doing this, I'm actually finding how to merge these tools and these insights into something new. And I created a fictional story, which helped me create this storytelling method that was more deeply transformative and not just sort of a surface skill. And I found like a void, right? Like, oh, if I dealt with this problem, maybe other people have dealt with this problem, that they needed these pieces connected for them. So then change becomes, I came up with a method. Like I have a method now that combines both my deeper insights and psychological insights with the process of really just needing to be able to do things and not be an imposter in your craft, right? Into a technique. And so I, have all of these different things that I realized that it helped. I kind of identified where my trauma would allow me to hit the void, which in this case was unstable self-image that is a result of all the trauma. If I can help people with storytelling, it improves that, and they get the parallax method. So that's essentially like, these are all other slides, but that's essentially what I did. Is I went through my whole narrative to find out how my service was a culmination of both what I thought was the point and what I realized the point was. So sometimes when you're running into a story, you'll think I have to tell the emotional story or the practical surface accolade success story. And in reality, it's a merging of the two that creates the empowered narrative, right? Yes, so that's kind of me plowing so fast so that I can get as much as I can. And I know that the time looks like it's all done, but I actually have answers to all those questions that you guys sent ahead. So I will share those somewhere. If you guys want to, I can probably message people, or what do you think, Hannah? What would be a good way? Because I wrote out the answers to people's sort of prompted questions in the submissions.
What we could do is you can send that over to me and we can include it. We package up the recording like on YouTube, and then in the description we can include that doc if you're comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do that. So we'll connect after and get those answers.
Okay, great. Because I have I know some people had questions about memoirs, and I broke down some exercises that people can use for that. Some different questions about just branding, storytelling, how to improve your craft. All sorts of tips. I do this every single day. It comes out of me. I love it. So I'll send those to Hannah, and then you guys can look through that if there's something that you had a specific question about.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This was amazing. So powerful. I love how you were workshopping live. I feel like it's really helpful to see things played out like in real time, how to like work through them. So I really appreciate you doing that. And thank you everyone for participating.